Hello and welcome to Partyline Chat. My name is Michael Finney. Today I have Kurt Wuckert and Hannah Rosenberg joining the program. The three of us are based around the Chicago area, generally, currently, or for the last few years. Do you guys want to introduce yourself and talk about the projects you're working on or have and the organizations that you're
By all means.
with? Thank you.
For sure. Hannah, do you want to start?
Sure. My name's Hannah Rosenberg. Crypto obsessed for like 8-9 years now. What I do full time at the moment is run a business called Velas Commerce, where I do some, blockchain crypto training and crypto integrations, which has been a lot of fun. I'm also the organizer for the Bob Meetup, the Bitcoin and Open Blockchain Meetup here in Chicago. So that's what I do briefly, although I could go on, but we'll stop it there. Go on, Kurt.
Thank you. So I'm Kurt Wuckert Jr. I've also been in the Bitcoin space for, this is going to be my 8th year now. I am currently the chief Bitcoin historian for CoinGeek.com. I'm also a partner over at CryptoTradersPro.com. At Crypto Traders, we teach fundamental analysis, technical analysis for people that are traders and such. But I am more so full-time working on the history of Bitcoin, specifically working in the big block space. I was a big Bitcoin casher, and actually before that, I was a big supporter of Bitcoin XT and Bitcoin Unlimited. And I'm very much embroiled in the Bitcoin SV space, among other things. But I consult with some of the businesses in the Bitcoin SV ecosystem as well, both independently and as part of my role at CoinGeek. So that's most of what people would know me from.
Cool.
Sounds good. So
I like that title, Bitcoin historian.
Thank you. I like it too. It was actually my idea.
somebody's
Nice.
got to do it.
So it's funny because I was doing freelance with them. I've been a ghostwriter for a number of publications. And then CoinGeek was like, hey, we can tell you're obviously, ideologically a big blocker. Would you be interested in writing with us? And yeah, sure. What the heck? And so I started just kind of explaining old school fundamentals, and they're like, hey, you got to come on full time, but we don't know what to call you, like whatever. And so I was like, well, I will come on, but you're going to call me chief historian. So they're like, hey, you know what? That actually sounds great. So it's been fun.
There you go. Cool.
What all has that entailed so far?
Well, man. Well, I'm one of those people who has semi-regular private email exchanges and stuff with the enigmatic Dr. Craig Wright, discussing all kinds of things. But I'm also privy to some of the stuff that's not been made public yet across a number of channels. Nothing super groundbreaking unless you've not been paying attention to it at all. But basically just writing out, I've written a couple of recent articles, for example, talking about like when Bitcoin's source code was moved from SourceForge over to GitHub, which was something that Satoshi was very clear that he didn't want community development. And people don't know this. People assume it went out to GitHub because GitHub's the most popular. And Satoshi actually really liked SourceForge because he was the only person with pull request keys and that kind of thing. So I think a lot of the history of Satoshi has been generally rewritten, and people are just unaware. They don't really think of it that way. The overwhelming majority of people that come to Bitcoin have come to it since 2017, and the people coming to Bitcoin is kind of on this increasing scale of total quantity of Bitcoiners over time. Like most people are always new people. So I try to tell these these things like, hey, you know what? You used to have to send money to a bank in Estonia to make a Bitcoin purchase. Like you didn't always have Coinbase and stuff like that. So those kind of things.
Okay. Interesting. So you look after that history.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing I always wonder, though, is people like sit and talk about, Satoshi meant this or Satoshi meant that.
Mm-hmm.
How much should we care?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm a history buff. This is actually why I wanted the history title. So for me, I've always loved political history, and it's the same kind of thing. Talk about whether or not it's appropriate to storm the Capitol, and and that's one of those conversations that's like, well, I mean, we can look at modern civic law, or we can look at the history of various civil unrests in this country and in others, or you can look at the foundations of the law and the foundations of the country itself, and say, well, this country was actually founded by shooting at police and soldiers, and so were most others. So if we're going to talk about why is something okay, I mean, I think one of the things to consider whether something is good or bad is to consider historical precedent. So it might not be the most important thing what Satoshi thinks about everything, but I do think that it's worth considering in almost every circumstance. I think to ignore it is both arrogant and probably foolish.
Right. Well, if we do have records and information, I mean, it always seems like a pretty good idea to understand what's going on. But then I just want to be in the situation where it's like Satoshi, was human, right? So Satoshi didn't necessarily know everything. So we kind of have to make choices that make sense here and now. So I don't know.
No, I agree.
Struggle with that one because I'm a huge fan of Satoshi's work, but at the same time, it's like you don't want to do the appeal to authority thing too much.
I agree. I think and as someone who knows Craig, I think a lot of people are like, oh well, everyone who likes BSV just loves Craig, and like Craig and I have a cordial professional relationship, but I wouldn't say we don't wish each other happy birthday. So
you're not besties.
No, we're not besties. Not that I wouldn't. He's plenty of fun in person when he's relaxed too. But it's just one of those things. But I think a lot of people really sort of worship this Satoshi godlike figure, and it's like, I also think that's inappropriate. I'm not a Craig worshiper. In fact, in a lot of ways, I think he can be quite problematic from a PR perspective on a whole bunch of things. So, it's just one of those things. Like, you know what? You don't get to choose. You don't get to choose your parents, and you don't get to choose who who did all kinds of things. You
just got to make the best of it.
Pretty much, and I think a lot of people even do that in all communities. I think BTC people do the same thing. They assume like, Satoshi must have been XYZ thing that I also value, and it's like,
right.
Maybe he wasn't. Maybe Satoshi and you aren't anything alike.
Satoshi was totally a carnivore, right? Obviously,
right? Yeah, exactly, and it's the same thing with other heroes. People will get obsessed with like a pop star or something too, and then you see behind the curtain and they're like, oh, okay, well, they're not anything like I thought they were, and therefore now I don't like their music and all these things, and it's like, well, don't make it so personal, I guess.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to talk about the role of events in the community? Physical, actual person-to-person events? Kurt, that's where I met you recently. And also, Hannah, that's where we met is the Bob events.
Yep, the Bob meetup. Yeah, the role of those events. Well, I'd like to give some nice speech about community building or something, but honestly, like it's always been a fairly selfish endeavor where it's just like I really love talking about this stuff, and what could be better than hanging out in a bar, drinking a glass of wine, talking about crypto, but it's been, I think, my husband would get a little annoyed with me sometimes, especially way back in the day, when I would start going to all these events, and he's just like, especially when I started organizing them, and I'm just spending all kinds of money on this stuff. It's like, this isn't making you any money, but I'm like, no. Like, trust me, this is going to work out, And in some ways it absolutely has, because when you really when you get to go out and hang out with people and spend time and talk, especially in person, humans just bond better that way. You really wind up building a lot of fantastic relationships. And so, I've never gotten paid a dime really for, I think I gave myself like $150 or something at one point, but I've never this has not been a money-making endeavor, right? Organizing events, not immediately, but you could argue that my entire crypto career now is based off of all the relationships I made, starting in 2015 when I started to, that's when I came back to Chicago, and when I started to attend crypto events. So yeah, it's been really, really good. And I think for anyone who's just looking to get into the space or get, more established and get the lay of the land or just develop, a sense of community, it's really awesome. I can't wait till we go back to drinking at the bar.
Yeah, says same.
Yeah.
It's funny to hear you say that because it really mirrors my experience too. My wife's a freelance filmmaker, so she would come with me to some of the events that I was attending, and I used to go to some of the Ethereum stuff a number of years ago too. And then I started the Bitcoin Cash Chicago meetup in it was early 2018. And then I now host the Bitcoin SV Chicago meetup as well. And she's like, how could you do this? So what could you possibly talk about with these people every month? And, and I mean, we have a Telegram group and we're, hey, how does this work? And we just like to talk scratch. And she's supportive because she likes the sort of the community aspect. So she will come sometimes, but she's just like, if I come with, you're not going to stay for an extra 3 hours and talk to some random person that showed up, are you? And I'm like no, I probably will.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Yes.
Right. It's actually what I'm looking forward to. So it's the same thing. I'm really looking forward to exactly that. Okay, I'll have 3 beers tonight instead of the one that I figured I would, and we'll stay an extra hour.
Yeah. There's definitely been some, days after crypto events where I've stumbled into the office. Yeah. But
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But it's great. And I love I think sometimes being at a crypto event is the most interesting room to be in. And I think, especially when I first started going to them, the first Bitcoin meetup I went to was the back room at someone's office. It was me and, 5 other people. And, half of them are crazy and the other half are just still people that you're pretty close with, Yep. But you just get a really high concentration of interesting characters. Not necessarily people you're going to agree with, not necessarily people you're going to like, but very interesting people.
No, that's true. We inevitably get 1 or 2 people that are very looking for a weird pyramid scheme, or they really have no idea what blockchain anything is about, except for they know something vaguely about making money with it. So they'll show up and they inevitably have some kind of business card, and they're part of multiple pyramid schemes, and so by the end of it, they're trying to get you to come to their Tupperware party too. And
then, that's definitely happened too. Where you're standing there oh, how do I extricate myself from this conversation? Oh no.
Right. Listen, bro, you should not be involved in any of this.
But it's always entertaining, right? It's never dull.
It is.
So there's that.
Yeah, no. Yeah, the crazier ones, the better for the stories, I guess.
Yeah, there's certainly some good stories. So how have you seen your meetups evolve? Like I say, the first meetup I went to was seriously the back room at someone's office with 5 people. And then I had a moment in probably the summer of 2017, maybe about August or so, when everything was going nuts.
Yep.
And I was just at their usual spot, but it was so packed. I couldn't I was suffocating in the room. So I had to go outside from it. I'm just standing out there and I'm just looking, going, how on earth did this happen? It had just changed so much, Yep. And then we had the bear market and it chilled back out again for a bit. And then you just had it was just me hanging out with my crypto besties,
Yep.
That. But yeah, I'm curious to see what your experiences were. All that.
Similar. Yeah. I mean, when I first started, and I've been to a couple of the Bob meetups, I was not particularly social at them because I didn't know anybody, but, walk around, kind of shake hands and whatever. Mm-hmm. And then there was one, I went to like a co-sponsored Bob event. It was in 2018 that was co-sponsored with Untraceable Events. And they were doing a thing in Chicago. It was their Loyalty Live conference, which I spoke at.
That Bob? That might have been...
The after party was a Bob. So a bunch of the Bob people came to the after party from the Untraceable event. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So it was some of those people, and I'm like, hey, I met you 2 or 3 years. Nobody remembered me. So I was like, okay, that's cool. But
I was the dude standing in the corner.
It's right. I'm the 6'3" guy. I don't know how you forget me, but that's fine. But anyways, but yeah, you get those where it's like, wow, 100 people showed up, and then 3 months later, once it's not exciting anymore, you're back down to like your loyal 8 people or whatever. But
yep.
So yeah, we've been through a bunch of that. We were doing them for a long while through most of 2018 and 19 over in I can't think of what the neighborhood is called. It used to be the old fish market, Fulton Market.
Oh, in the west over there.
Yeah. So we were over at the arcade bar there, and we did those for probably a year and a half, where we were meeting once or twice a month, and those were a lot of fun, but they were super loud. So it was always the day after. I was always like super hoarse.
Yes.
And so then we moved. We were moving to the Ethereum hack house, which is not far from there, and it was right when the pandemic started. So we never held an event at the hack house. And we've been doing them Zoom since early this year. So
yeah,
whatever. And those, we still get the same 10 or 12-ish people. And then we've done the occasional. We did a hash war party at a hot dog joint in Tinley Park. We probably had 20 people. And that's where I finally met Michael in person. So that was
nice.
That was fun. But yeah, they go up and down. I kind of don't care how many people show up, but it does make it hard to plan for sometimes.
Oh, it makes it very difficult for the planning because it's when I first started organizing the Bob meetup, we were meeting in Wuckert Park in just this little pizza place up there. Sure. It is nice, and you get 20 people, and we all hang out and we'd have fun. And then there was that event we had in 2017 where you just it was like, this is a fire hazard.
Yeah.
You cannot do this.
Sure.
And then we were just scouring the city to try and find different locations, and we moved to M Hub for a while and did it there. And yeah, so I don't know. We'll see. Maybe when the summer rolls around, we'll have some meet up at Sully's sometimes, and they have an outdoor space. So
nice.
Maybe when the summer rolls around, we'll go back to doing that.
Didn't you have one a few months back?
It's been hard to plan lately, so we're just going to see how it goes. We did. We at the patio on the first floor, we had an event out at Sully's, which was nice. It was a little chilly, but it wasn't too bad. It's totally worth it. Yeah. But we'll see. Fingers crossed. There'll be some nice rooftop crypto conversations happening in the summer, hopefully.
Yeah, it would be refreshing.
Mm-hmm. That would be nice.
However, I haven't not enjoyed the Zoom style meetups. And I think, in some ways, aside from I work from home and I'm therefore on Zoom calls all the time, so it's a lot less novel than I think it would have been. But
yeah,
but I think it is interesting because I feel like a lot of times you get stuck in your little breakout square because how many people can you talk to at once? So we would do a presentation or something, but then I inevitably spend 90% of my time talking to 10% of the attendees. Right. And I like the Zoom style because it's kind of you know what? Somebody can filibuster the floor, and then we can have a more fruitful discussion among everybody. And I think nobody feels like, well, I'm stuck in the corner of the table or whatever, and therefore not being heard. So I do like that about the Zoom part.
Yeah, no, there's benefits to it. For me, it's we do them and I enjoy them, but it's just not at all the same. So it's
yeah, agreed.
Yeah,
I miss the personal socializing and stuff. That's the big loss. But I, trying to pick out the wins.
Trying to there's some silver linings in there. I mean, I don't have to like get on the train and go anywhere, so that's nice.
Do you think that there's
there's a question?
Yeah. Do you think that there's an ideal platform for connecting with people digitally? Maybe the problem there is it becomes like a platform that pushes people up towards an imaginary sort of I'm trying to think. I don't want to say pulpit, but like what's the thing that you present from? That's slipping my mind, the word. Haven't been to any events.
The lectern.
Yeah, the lectern, like this imaginary lectern where you're kind of like presenting to people this large group, and then people carry on. Where here, I think maybe this is a small group, and it's also just dialogue focused. It's just audio and dialogue focused. Maybe this is a better way to connect with people, like a traditional phone style as opposed to video chatting, where there's also an algorithm that
we've experimented with different things. So I think it was Hubs is what it's called. Yeah So we experimented. We did I believe it was a halving party last year, and we did this. I think the platform's called Hubs. It's a Mozilla thing. And so everyone like gets this little avatar, and it's kind of like if you have a 3D, like if you have a VR headset, you can join that way, or you can just do it on your browser. And the kind of neat thing about that is when it adjusts the audio so that when you're close to a group, like you can hear what they're talking about, or you can kind of walk away and join a different group. So it gets a bit more of that feel of like that style of interaction when you're just hanging out at the bar. And that was fun. Like that was kind of cool. But I think some people had trouble figuring out how to move around in the thing, and we kind of added, although that added some a bit more of the feel that you're kind of trying to replicate hanging out at the bar. It was kind of a bit of a learning curve for some people. Like, how do I move around and, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
I've had some success. So before I started working full time with CoinGeek, I was with a cybersecurity firm, and we were a Microsoft partner. So we used Microsoft Teams quite a bit, and I was surprised how robust the Teams platform was, because it allowed you to do like breakout rooms. The manager of the talk could always like create multiple breakout rooms, and the display function was really good if I want to do like screen share or share a PowerPoint or whatever. I've never done it for like a meetup, but I've done it for plenty of sort of corporate bullshit meetings.
Yeah.
And it was good. It was surprisingly good, because I tend not to like Microsoft products. So I think with a little bit of training, somebody that was good at using the tool could probably make a pretty cool event off of that platform.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there are benefits to being at home, but
yeah.
What did you do with that cybersecurity?
I'm sitting here right now in my Uggs and my sweatpants. But yeah.
So well, it's funny. My boss just texted me, so apparently he's listening. He was like, "Hey, mention the company. It's go Vanguard. GoVanguard.com." We were I was primarily doing marketing for the company, but on the security side, I was doing social engineering for red team, like persistent penetration testing events. So if we were to attempt to hack let's say it's a hedge fund or something, it would be my job to set up multiple SOC accounts and do recon, try to befriend people on LinkedIn, build out fake websites, and become an interested potential client, and just gather. I was doing a lot of information gathering, and then from that, I would usually help in the engagement, so actively sending emails, and I'd have the team on. And if somebody would click the link, click the fake malware, like we would know instantly, and then I would be the guy to like pull the plug, like, okay, we got them, and then we're gonna wrap. So that kind of thing was a lot of fun. I really liked that part of the job. But it was also, like I said, just a lot of simple marketing stuff. I was writing, doing article work and stuff for the company as well.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a good time. I really liked that job.
Cool. So, random question. What's the project you're most looking forward to this year? Let's talk about enthusiastic things for 2021.
Gosh, there's a few big things. So there's a documentary coming out that's being co-produced by CoinGeek, discussing the early days of Satoshi. Some of the proofs that are not yet publicly known that Craig Wright intends to use in the various lawsuits and stuff once they've been used, and then some of the ones that I don't think will be made public until we debut them. We're actually putting together like a Hollywood quality documentary. I don't know how many parts it'll be, but it'll be very much in the vein of like the Netflix style expose documentary style. So I'm really excited to be working on that. So I'm consulting. I'm helping with language and all kinds of stuff in that regard. So I'm excited for people to see that. So it's going to be a big project through the year. I don't know that it'll be debuted this year, but it'll be something I'll be working on in the background. And otherwise, a lot of consulting on some of the bigger projects that are people don't really know about, but that are intending to bring big corporate transactions onto the Bitcoin SV ledger. So I'm excited for more giant blocks. The biggest block we've mined is 369 megabytes. There was no orphans before or after. The blocks preceding and proceeding were about 10 minutes apart, and all of the data came from the public mempool. So big proofs that Bitcoin absolutely can scale on chain without, funny business. But 369 megabytes is certainly not global commerce level. So I'm looking forward to bringing the average block size way up and celebrating those victories too.
What do you think would be global commerce level for the size of a block?
Well,
what do you compare it to? Like Visa plus MasterCard, Visa plus, I can't remember the name of the crazy Chinese payment networks. But
yeah, they have a few. I think if you look at Black Friday day, if we're just going to look at simple commerce, Black Friday is the biggest shopping day of the year. You can see spikes on Black Friday of 50,000 transactions per second globally. Of course, it's a holiday mostly in the Western Hemisphere, so it's not global, but it's the biggest day for payment processors. I would like to see blocks that show no problems and humming along at 50,000 transactions a second. So
that would be a big block.
That would be a very big block.
But that's a very big block.
It is. So, and part of that, what's being designed at nChain is a cloud deployed node implementation that's called TerraNode. And as the name would imply, it is intended to be able to do terabyte blocks every 10 minutes by containerizing all functions. So rather than having the node software where you're using the RAM and the CPU and the everything of a single computer, you actually run it in the cloud, and each thing is run as part of a different cloud machine that operates as a common machine, using some of the more modern technology, basically like Kubernetes. For anybody that's familiar with how cloud computing works, it's similar to a Kubernetes style system. So I'm excited to see it happen. Per usual, I'm not a big, invest in Bitcoin guy. I'm not the guy that tells everybody to just go buy Bitcoin. I'm one of those guys who's like, let's see if we can just put the pedal to the metal and let's see when the doors fly off. So that's what I think is the coolest thing about Bitcoin.
So they're trying to build terabyte blocks using cloud computing.
Essentially. So yes, rather than having simple node implementations like everybody has, where you just download a package, they want miners to be thinking more progressively, like using cloud cluster structure and then hashing, using the hash power to be split up by multiple computers they're very, very heavily specializing in each of the various node functions. So it's just a way to create efficiency that people haven't really thought of before.
It's interesting with everything that's gone on lately with Amazon Web Service, banning Parler and stuff. Do you worry about moving to cloud computing causing higher risk of censorship?
I I would. So when I say cloud computing, I don't mean pushing to something like Amazon or Microsoft Azure or anything like that. I mean, literally, the miners will become those cloud computing platforms. So they'll be deploying their own clusters and then connecting multiple layers of the network like that. So it's a unique thing. The idea is ultimately, like, over the long tail, let's say, a decade or 20 years, for the internet to essentially become less efficient than Bitcoin, in so much as it would make more sense to use Bitcoin as a general purpose network than it would to even use the internet itself. So I'm talking about basically replacing AWS with the distributed consensus of, second and third generation node software running on proof of work.
I don't know, though. So all internet traffic requires proof of work. That would be a whole hell of a lot of proof of work.
It would indeed be a whole hell of a lot of proof of work. But I mean, what's cool about proof of work? It's a spam deterrent. Makes sure that valuable information makes it to the top instead of just loud information. It stops the censorship issues that we're having with social media and all kinds of things. This is in my Twitter profile. I say I've had coffee with Daniel Krawitz. Daniel is a huge proponent. Like, if you want to really get into
I know Daniel. Well, I've been on a panel with Daniel. Should I update my Twitter profile?
Probably, maybe. I don't know. He is the emperor of Bitcoin.
He's an interesting character, but
yeah.
So he's a big fan of this one.
He's a lot of people don't know this about Daniel. Daniel's actually a classically trained physicist.
Wow.
So he's I'm not sure what branch of physics, but when you get him talking about black holes, and he will go for 6 or 8 hours without a breath. And Daniel is so much smarter than anybody would even think. People think of him as, he's this Bitcoin guy, and he is, but he's also that, like, theoretical, matter isn't real and I can prove it kind of guy. So he's one of those guys that talks about all kinds of this stuff. But he created a protocol in 2020 called BoostPow about using non-financial transactions and proof of work on data. So as a spam service, you're using even GPUs or other cycles in the Bitcoin space to push valuable information to the top of the heap. So, rather than clicking Facebook and scrolling, you could say, what things on Facebook have the most proof of work today? Meaning that people are actually contributing hash power to something that they think is valuable, which is the costly signal of Bitcoin in the first place, right? So it's... Granted, it's an ethereal concept. I don't expect people to just instantly be like, oh, yes, that's a good idea, of course.
Well, but, when there was that big rift, in the community between, Bitcoin, Core and Bitcoin Cash and all that stuff, it was interesting to me because a lot of it was very philosophical, right? There was all these sort of philosophical debates on this sort of stuff. And for me, it was always technical, It was like, what, because I try and stay out of people's trauma. I don't call people names on Twitter. I usually save that for Facebook. But I don't have the time to care who said what mean thing to who today. No energy for it. But to me, it's just it's always this very technical thing where I just can't understand how everything being on chain is efficient. Right? It's just like this efficiency problem that I see there, where I don't know, we don't have to dive into a technical debate, but for me, it's just always this technical concern about the efficiency of that architecture.
Sure.
I don't know. Time will tell, I'm sure, but
yeah, but between you and me, I like to be that guy who can have a big disagreement with somebody and shake hands at the beginning, shake hands after, and have a drink with that person after we leave the stage. So by all means, I'm happy to talk about it. I think on the one hand, it's only partially a technical issue. I think the other thing, I think the thing that people ignore most is the economic incentive. Should all data in the world be on chain? I think the answer is no, actually. But however, if that data can be made more valuable by having it be given more integrity, so let's say important logistical data, like can I sell this thing for 30% more if I can prove its chain of custody forever? Well, then the answer becomes at least maybe. And so I think as you take a look at those things, these aren't questions that should be answered in the theoretical. I think really the thing that makes the most sense to me is creating the tool and then letting entrepreneurs see if there's profit there. And if there is, well, then then you've created a disruption in even the quality, the transmission, and the saving of data forever. So
it's funny because as much as a fan as I am of this technology, I wind up just running around all the time telling people about how you don't need a blockchain for that because I find it to be I'm a developer, so working with, sort of these standard systems, they're centralized, right? But there's a lot of efficiency in that centralization. Sure. And I think there's a huge amount of inefficiency, and it's very expensive when you have decentralization. Now, sometimes you want that, and that is totally worth it, and that's the only way something can work and maintain its, independence. So I think there's this trade-off between, we want this decentralization, but it's inefficient. And so it kind of makes sense, I think, to optimize how you use it rather than use it for just everything. But where those lines are.
Right. And that's the thing. I think you and I, therefore, agree on principle and may disagree on where the line is.
Right. Yeah. Right. But the devil's in the details. So
Exactly. So, and that's the thing. I think my biggest gripe with the small block ethos of don't use that, don't spam the blockchain is a common thing. I always just look at it and say, well, who are you to tell me what to do? If Bitcoin is permissionless, why shouldn't I? There was
who decides what is spam, right?
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah. Because if I'm a billionaire, for me to send a $1 million transaction seems arbitrary. But if I'm someone in the third world and I want to do Bitcoin transactions, and there are people saying, "Oh, no, don't send $1 transactions on BTC," and then I'm looking at it and saying, like, "Well, shoot, why can't I join the global economy in this revolution?" Like, "Well, you're too poor. Sorry." So, like, it strikes me as. It's like, well, that sucks. That's not the revolution I signed up for either. Yeah.
Right. No, so, you don't want that. Then you wind up in that debate about what we want it to be. Right.
Yes.
That store of value versus medium of exchange and all that stuff. And I'm stuck in some sort of strange middle land where I'm a huge fan of the main chain being expensive and second layers, and also a huge fan of commerce and microtransactions, right? Yeah. So it's like,
there you have it.
I want crypto, I want Bitcoin to be a currency that we're all actually using, because I think that's when it achieves its full potential. Sure.
Well, I do too, and I think that's the big problem between like big blockers and small blockers is like you have this innate fear that the other side is evil, and I hear it on the BSV side. I have Bitcoin cashers who I was friends with for years who are like, "Oh, you're just this piece of shit sellout." I'm like, "Hey man, we've been friends for like." Like why does it have to go there? And it's silly.
It's like, we disagree. We agree on everything except the exact way to implement a certain technology.
Well, right, exactly right. How many megabytes per hour should be pushed across a global value network? You know what? Fuck you. That's an insidious question. Whoa. Okay.
Good call.
Yeah, it got a little intense there. But humans have this problem in general that, we see obviously in politics too, where, that they find something that they dislike or that they're scared of or they're worried about. And then they just latch onto that thing as bad. And then it becomes this false dichotomy, of this, this binary choice, the bad guy and the good guy. And we just, humans, I think, in general, are very good at doing that and not so good at like seeing all of the gray in between those two,
for sure,
intense extremes. So,
I think that's actually a good segue to like, this is why it's important to have one-on-one conversations with people or have them in person. Because I mean, I have rarely met someone who I disagreed with on the internet, who I then later met in person and was like, oh, yeah, I mean, this person's a reasonable person. They have a family and they have their own loves and fears and all the. It's like, why would I hate them over this stupid idea? So,
yeah, but it's easy when it's so abstracted out on something like social media to just fixate on that one little thing.
For sure. Well, and I think there's two other aspects in the Bitcoin space. Is that A, Bitcoin is innately competitive. And then B, like there's so much weird financial incentive tied up. Like nobody doesn't have a conflict of interest tangled up in their opinion also. And so it becomes like, not only are you telling me I'm
one coin or the other. Yeah,
exactly. So it's like, not only might I be wrong on my facts, which would be embarrassing enough, but like I may also die poor because I was wrong. Like, so it's like, yeah, I think it makes the Bitcoin talk, particularly toxic. So I get it in that sense.
Turns up the emotional intensity on some of these things.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. That it certainly does.
Yeah. But. So I think that was like the 20-minute interlude. But I'm curious. You asked me what I'm excited about for 2021. So Hannah, what are you excited about for 2021?
Yeah, no, this is kind of where my head was at. Is I have some educational projects I work on, which are really cool and fun. But I have I'm hoping to do a lot of work on actually integrating crypto payments into systems, which is what I'm really excited about. I'm excited about all of it. I have this hideous problem of just like wanting to do all the things, but there's only so many hours in the day. But at the moment, I'm hoping that, I'll get to spend a lot of 2021 actually integrating crypto payments into things, which would be a lot of fun. And this project I'm working on, which, isn't official yet, so I won't say anything about it. But it's, cool stuff. So I'm hoping to, I get torn between being an educator and being like a tech nerd, and so I have, I don't know, might dive into being a tech nerd for a while again, which would be fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
That does sound like fun.
It is. But it's so different, I mean, I was a developer for a while, working full-time as a developer, and then now I'm running a business full-time, and just like the difference in mindset between those two things. It's like, when you're a developer, you get to really indulge your obsessive tendencies,
Absolutely.
I'm just going to sit in this room and I'm going to sit back there on that couch with that headphone, which means don't bother me. I'm just going to sit there I'm sitting there literally 5 hours straight. I won't even get up and go to the bathroom. I'm just going to sit there for 5 hours, fixated on something. And that can be a lot of fun. I joke that like when I started working full time as a developer, I could just like watch my social skills atrophy as I was doing it. But it's such a huge difference in mindset than when you're having to run a business or when you're teaching. It's very, very different. So it's
What is your area of expertise in development?
So I focus on Bitcoin and Bitcoin integrations, and then Lightning Network. So I do a lot of work there. Yeah.
Interesting.
Which is cool.
So are you a C++ background, or what's?
No, my development stuff was all more traditional. Well, I actually studied economics. I didn't study tech at all at university.
Sure.
But then got into tech, and I was a LAMP stack developer for years. So that's PHP, Apache, MySQL, all that sort of stuff.
Sure.
So the stuff I do now, though, is I think it's more, the architecture of trying to figure out how to integrate. Well, I did a lot of e-commerce stuff. And e-commerce, just credit card payment workflow is very different than crypto payment workflow.
Sure. Yep.
And so you wind up with all of those type of issues, and just it's a lot of fun trying to adjust systems, to get it all to work together. And so I work on that sort of stuff. Yeah. And integrating, cool. So you wind up, I wind up, selecting tools more than writing them myself, which is
sure. Makes sense.
Fun. And then I miss just sitting down in the corner writing code all day sometimes. So then sometimes I find myself like over-engineering something because I'm like, but if we do it this way, I can write a plugin that does blah, blah, blah.
Right. Yep.
So I have to be careful not to over-engineer myself
for sure.
A dev day. Yeah.
That makes sense. I work with I've worked with developers at Go Vanguard, and now, I consult in a couple of companies, and everybody's, we're moving everything to React, and then we're going to connect. I got guys that are just rewriting Node software in Golang, and because they needed to do, these 3 things that can't be done otherwise. And, it's like, all right, well, see you in 2 months. So
yeah. And it's such a different mindset too. You really have to, like I can build this thing and this would be really awesome. So this is my developer brain wants to, but then I have to stop and use my business brain and say, okay, we could do that. But is that what actually makes the most sense for this situation?
Sure.
And usually, to my great disappointment, the answer is no. So you wind up just using something else.
Right.
But yeah. That perspective.
Well, and then you end up looking at your stack, and you've got 40 SDKs and different things in your dependency stack and all that. It's like, oh god,
this is a maze, which is exactly what you don't want. Yeah.
Well, exactly right. You don't see a lot of that, but it's when things get bootstrapped for like, there's a hackathon in 20 days that I want to qualify for or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I miss it sometimes though. I want to take a 3-week vacation and go write a plugin. And in some ways it is. Like development's hard and it'll drive you crazy, but it uses a completely different part of your brain. So in some ways it's like sitting in the corner writing code for 3 weeks is like a vacation from my inbox,
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I can relate with that. I like to. It's actually why I started writing. It's funny. People think of me as a writer, and I have I wasn't even a particularly good writer until just the last couple of years. And even now I'm like super nervous every time I submit an article. I'm like, well, here it is. Everyone's going to know I suck. And like
imposter syndrome. Yes.
Yes. Well, it's funny because I just started doing it amid these actually the scaling debate. It was 2017 coming up to Bitcoin Cash and being like, okay, what do I actually believe and why do I believe it? And so I just started writing my thoughts, and I was like, you know what? I haven't heard anybody say it this way. I'm gonna push it as a ghostwriter because I don't want anybody to know it was me either. And and now it's become this therapeutic thing where it's like, cool. I'm gonna write a 2,500 word essay today, and everyone needs to leave me alone. So
yeah.
It's weird.
And then also you can do really good work when you get in the mindset. It's like, that whole thing, dance like no one's watching,
Yes.
and so you can't code, thinking about your code review, and you can't write an article thinking about the comments, right? Like you have to just every time I do that, I sit down no one's ever going to see this. I'm just making notes, and then when you can do it that way, I think it winds up, when you can get into that mindset, it makes it not only a lot more fun, but I think it generally improves quality.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice. I like that a lot.
Yeah. And it's just, writing something, thinking about a code is just horrible.
Oh yeah, no. Well,
do you ever see that meme of some guy sitting, it's like North Korea, and there's some guy sitting at a computer, and Kim Jong, whatever it is looking over his shoulder, and he's surrounded by military people, and it says how to code with 0 bugs. And just
oh jeez, I think I have seen it. Yeah, it's.
Oh, that would be a nightmare. Oh,
yeah. No, it's funny. People like the creative process and all of that. I think coding is a little more ethereal. I think people can relate less with writing code than they can with writing, an essay, I guess. But but it is. It's interesting because it is actually the same basic process. Like it's just a different language. So somebody that knows and going through code review is
terrifying.
Really something.
Absolutely it's terrifying. But I mean, it's good. But it's yeah. But it can
sure. Yeah. I have to ask, do you do anything like? Do you have a weird hobby or anything that's like your de-stressor that people might not know about you?
No, I don't really, and I probably should. Like, I need to step away from the computer. I don't. Well, okay, so I have things that I do when like my brain's just overwhelmed. Well, I love sci-fi, so I'll watch sci-fi all day, and then I'll watch like horrible, like the pimple popping videos on YouTube, which everyone's terrified by.
I do too. It's actually scary that you said that, to be honest, because I do the same damn thing.
Yes. And it's like, I know it's disgusting, but it just relaxes me, so I'm just gonna.
That's awesome. Like, it's horrible, but it's awesome.
Yeah. But I think I'm in a very position is that I get to do the things that I really love. So I get to choose projects based on things I really want to do now. So it kind of, except when there's a deadline, then it makes it not fun. But for the most part, when you're starting a project, like that is my hobby. So when I need to unwind, it's just going to be popping videos that doesn't require any neurons to fire at all. It's just like a massage. Just lay there and enjoy it. It's fine.
That's funny. I do that too. So I'm actually also something. I wouldn't say I'm always afraid when I say I'm a sci-fi nerd that people are going to start with like, well, how many Philip K. Dick books have you actually read? And then I'm going to look like an ass. But
how many have you read?
But I do like sci-fi. 2 or 3, maybe, like mostly in high school.
There are a lot of them.
I think I've only read one. Yeah.
I think he's maybe written 100 short novellas or whatever.
Yeah,
so
there's a lot.
But I like just whatever trashy Star Wars or whatever.
I'm all Star Trek. So I've got I can debate with you about my favorite episode of Star Trek all day. That I got down. Cool. Nice. But the other stuff, I have no idea. So
that's funny. My other one. So when I'm not nerding out, and it's quite a bit less since the pandemic, unfortunately. But I do mixed martial arts for like the last 10 years now. Yeah. So that's my I did martial sweat arts. It out thing.
For years when I was younger, and the sight of a boxing ring still makes me incredibly anxious. Like, it turns out that, getting punched in the face is just not at all my thing. But so I'm more of a yoga person now.
That's fair.
Some people really that's invigorating to them,
It is.
To me, it's like a trigger to every fear response in my body.
Yeah,
so it's not for me.
No, honestly, I started the same because I was always like I was a nerd. I'm a big nerd. I'm a very big guy, but I was not tough. So at least I didn't play sports. I was never that guy. I was always like in the economics club or whatever. But
but me too.
Right out of high school, I was like, you know what? I always wanted to be a ninja, and I guess this is how it starts. And so I started. I walked into a Carlson Gracie Jiu Jitsu team, mixed martial arts school, and now I coach. I coach Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and stuff a couple nights a week, and
that's awesome.
It's fun. So I became an athlete in my 20s, and I'm now 34. So it's
one thing I really liked about martial arts was that structure and discipline aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think it's kind of hard to find in other things. Yoga's great, but it doesn't really have that sort of type of thing to it.
You're only really competing with yourself in yoga, which I also practice a bit, primarily as like physical therapy, but
to recover from your jiu-jitsu.
I always have like lower back issues, and I'm like, okay, I need to do yoga for a week now.
Some yoga, you do, yeah.
but yeah, it's funny because I mean, it just wasn't that athlete, and even now I'm still. Like, I think people at the gym are like, oh, Kurt's kind of that lazy guy, but I'm also such a, like, I'm such a good problem solver that I'm like, well, you might be 24 and on steroids, but I am a lot smarter than you. So, like, if I can weather the storm, I can win.
About jiu-jitsu too, is because I did some of that. It's very strategic in like how I can make the best use of momentum and energy and weight and that type of stuff, rather than am my arms bigger than yours and I can punch you harder, right? There's a lot more strategy in jiu-jitsu, which makes it pretty interesting.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Well, and in that, it is. It's like the nerd's martial art, where it really is not about your physicality. It's your ability to solve problems on the fly. So it's nerd weaponization is a word I have commonly used on the mats.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah, it's fun stuff.
Cool. Yeah, it's making me think of my gym days a little bit. I'm going to get a gym membership again one day. That would be nice.
Well, anything to get me out of my robe and slippers after 10 hours at my desk. So.
Oh God, yeah. I go for walks a lot now because it's like you just have to. I have to leave the house, and even when I was working from home before the pandemic, like I would go sit at a cafe for an hour or something. Yeah. Just like that process of getting out of the house just puts you in like the. It's not Sunday afternoon.
Right.
I need to be doing something. I need to be productive. So it puts you in the right state of mind. So yeah.
I do 20 or 30-minute walks once a day too. So my wife and I will go out. We'll take the baby out. I got the 18-month-old son. So when it's nap time, it's like, all right, I gotta put my pants on, go for a walk, do this whole thing. Like be a respectable human for half an hour.
No, we do the mandatory family every day. I think pretty much every day, because otherwise, you drive each other insane in here all day. Yeah. Fun times. Cool. Well, gents, it was fun to talk. How are we going for here?
Yeah, I mean,
question, Michael. What do you got?
You can talk about anything you want to. You can go for as long as you're available. I'm not gonna make anybody stay longer than they want to. I think maybe.
Okay. No, I did. Go ahead. No, I was saying I promised my daughter I would play a video game with her this afternoon. So I am going to get in trouble if I don't eventually go do that.
Oh, okay, I don't want you to get in trouble with your daughter for sure. I suppose
I should.
The last thing I might ask is, how can the payment methods that are being implemented by the two solutions you guys prefer, how can they be combined at times? Or more easily bridged, maybe excluding.
You're breaking up a little bit, Michael. We're missing like or at least I'm missing every third word or so. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know.
So I think what the question is, you're saying is you're talking about. Yeah, you're talking about sort of the different sort of solutions to crypto problems, right? Sort of Kurt's fan of big blocks. I'm a fan of, things like second layers. And you're talking about where do these things come together?
Right.
Well, I would say, first of all, is that there's how do you say it? What's that commercial? ¿Por qué no los dos? Why couldn't we do both? And I think this is, all a grand experiment. Right. And of course, it's a grand experiment with a lot of on the line, a lot of people, entire net wealth online. But I think we just have to experiment and find out what actually works. And so I can make a guess based on, what I'm looking at and the knowledge that I have, and I can make a guess on, I think, having this type of first layer and that type of second layer, these sorts of things make sense, and I'm going to go support these things and see how it plays out. But, and it's not awesome. This is what I tell a lot of Bitcoin maximalists when I'm talking to them. They're like, why would you, why do you hang out with those Ethereum thing? Like, it's Bitcoin, it's all Bitcoin. What I tell them is I say, hey, okay, maybe it's all Bitcoin, but, like all these other coins, well, they're just a great test net, aren't they? Like, why don't we go let them try all these cool new things and figure out what works and what doesn't? And then we can just adapt what's proven, I'm like, oh, well, maybe, so it's like, it's all a really grand experiment. And I have, it is, I think, all about your goals. My specific goals is I would really love to see this turn into an actual currency, a very, not just a proof of concept currency, which is I think where we're kind of at now, but an actually used global currency. And so I am all for experimentation and mixing different things and trying different stuff until we figure it out, because we still got a ways to go on figuring that one out.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I basically agree. I look at the problems differently than a lot of people. And it sounds like you actually are looking at problems differently than most of the people I talk to as well. I think so many people come to the space either from like this pure ideological, like we need to separate from the system. This is my Swiss bank account for the common man kind of thing, or it's this investment vehicle, and that's really all that matters is sound money that makes me rich or whatever. Right. And I get that. It's not an invalid use case. In fact, I think it's a very valuable use case. But if I believe that the technology was created to solve problems in addition to that, and I don't see a reason why we can't be working on that today. So in much the same way, it's like, well, I don't see the reason why we can't be at least attempting to integrate the blockchain technology into real business today, rather than these sort of like vague startups. And one of the things I dislike about Ethereum projects, for example, is almost all of them start with a token that's not really necessary in the economic sense, but they're using it for kind of startup liquidity. Even if they're not calling it an ICO, that's still kind of part of the conversation. And and then they don't really scale. And then like with DeFi right now, we've got, it's $100 to open up a Uniswap account and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay, so then Ethereum doesn't really work for anything bigger than what it is. And, arguably it doesn't work at the scale it's at now. So I look at those things and say, okay, like what if I wanted to take, let's say a top 500 business in the settlement or some kind of economic transfer space, or maybe even like the kind of client that like Ripple would be chasing as an organization, to say, hey, we've got this solution, we can do X amount settlements per day with X amount value and all of that, and actually pursue them. And I think there's so few people that are saying, you know what, I want to bootstrap a business that uses a blockchain for massive throughput. In fact, I would argue that there's almost none. Like, most people are just not thinking about spending cryptocurrency transactions or making Bitcoin transactions that transact a huge amount of value and hope to make money as a business. I think almost everybody, is somewhere above 99%, just wants to buy something and sell it in the future for more money. And well,
I mean, are you just talking to people on Twitter? But it's I do because I co-teach a blockchain class at UIC, and it's business students, and so I get to talk to a lot of business students who are thinking about applying blockchain to various different business scenarios. So I get to have a lot of those conversations. Sure. And those are really fun, interesting things. But I don't know, kind of, we all get stuck our own little bubbles. It's hard to say what's like the actual prevalence of that line of thought. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if there was an example of a thriving business that was thriving because of its use of blockchain in their business, then I would say like, oh, well, here's, and I guess the only real example I mean, I can think of a few, but like in the Ethereum space, I would say maybe like Brave Browser and Bat are probably the best example of a business that's utilizing a token as part of their business model. Like,
right. In a way that really makes sense. You're like, yes,
exactly.
This works. This is,
right.
Yeah.
Like the token has a business purpose.
Yes,
right.
Yeah.
You know, so I give them nothing but praise, you know, and I say, hey, cool, you guys are running a real business that is using a real token. And then in the BSV space, I use the Twitch social network constantly, and I'm friends with the founder and stuff. And, you know, they've been profitable since day one because they have very little infrastructure, and every action is a transaction, and they get, I think they get a penny from everything that occurs on the network. And, you know, it's like, okay, cool. Like you're running a real business on chain. You're using the tool as the tool and not as, you know, part of your treasury or whatever.
Right.
And so I really, really think we need to have more of that in order to not just get written off by the government and all kinds of things as like a weird anarchist niche of the economy that just needs to be snuffed out. So,
well, I mean, I wouldn't, you know, they'll write you off if they can, right? If you step on their toes.
Of course. But it's harder. It's harder when there's, you know, when you can say like, actually, there's a $10 billion business sector over here not using it as gambling and money laundering and all these things, you know?
That would be helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree. But yeah, no, I care about this stuff actually being used, you know? Mm-hmm. And it's nice as a store of value, you know, like that's number go up is always fun. I don't complain about that. Sure. But that's not why I'm here, you know?
Right.
Like this is really fun side game, you know, to open the browser today and what's going on now, you know? Mm. But yeah, I want to see it actually used, and so I think experimentation on how to use it or how to make it work at scale is good, because I think it's a tough problem to solve.
It is. Well, and that's, you know, despite all the drama, that's why I ended up in the BSV space is, you know, everybody wants to talk about, you know, Craig being this bad person and he's not very nice and all of these things. And I think that's, you know, while some of those things are true, you actually look at like the engineers who are solving problems that nobody else is really even asking, and that's the stuff that really has me excited in that space is to see like, oh, okay, like this company has 100 engineers that are trying to create next gen node software and that kind of stuff. And so I think. I'm a big believer anyways in swinging for the fences, and if you miss, at least you can say, hey, you know what, we tried really, really hard. And
we figured out some interesting things along the way.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, if we all fail, maybe someone can repurpose the work and change the world anyways.
It's a cool thing about open source software is that they can. Yep. For sure. Well, on that note, I'm going to have to get out of here because family dramas for failing to uphold my parental duties. So,
hey, well, thank you.
It was really nice to finally talk to you, Hannah.
Yeah, it was a fun conversation. Thanks for having me.
For sure. Be good.
All right, I will. It's going to take me now 5 minutes to find the exit button, but leave server. There it is. Hey. All right, cool. All right, I will talk to y'all soon.
Have a good one.
See you, Hannah.
You too.
Kurt. So I think on that note, Michael, I am. Okay. If you don't have anything super pressing for me, I'm happy to answer another question or two if you want. But
there was actually a question from Periscope. Somebody was asking about the Satoshi coins that were moved.
I have no non-public information about those, but only because it happened over the weekend. I would. The fact that I know nothing would lead me to believe that it is probably nothing. Because if it was something, I probably would have been alerted for the sake of producing a press release. So I really don't know. Unfortunately, I don't know.
Right. The only thing I saw was that the tweet that was floating around. So I have no idea about it. I always assume stuff like that is just kind of like
it's certainly a Satoshi era wallet that moved, but I'm I haven't looked at it closely myself because I tune out on Saturdays too, so I haven't even had the chance to really dig into it myself.
Yeah. Well, if you want to say anything or talk about anything that you're looking forward to, feel free to talk about that or any of the projects a little more in depth. Feel free to go there.
Sure. I think I'll go maybe 5 minutes here. And I'd like to point out just a couple of shout outs actually. I think there's a lot of really awesome work being done by the guys from Tonic Pow. TonicPow.com. They're trying like hell to change the face of the ad industry. And I think it's a really crucial project there. They've been busting ass. I'm friends with the two guys that run the company, and I helped them a little bit with marketing. And they are, it's such a cool idea, and it's so important. To revolutionize the way that ads are used across social media is a big thing that we need to fix. And so they deserve a shout out. I think most of the people listening, I imagine, are on Twitch anyways, but anybody who's not should check out Twitch as well. I think it's the best simple human use case for Bitcoin and for blockchain technology generally to show what is actually capable of being done, in that you can put information, you can send photos, and it works like Twitter, and everybody gets paid out. Like the economic model that underpins it is really interesting. Like it is an incredible proof of concept, but more than that, it's a profitable business today. And so I think they deserve a lot of credit for just creating all of that. And so when people talk about Bitcoin SV, like I mentioned with Hannah, like everybody wants to talk about Craig, and like Craig is an interesting fellow, but by no means should he be this filibuster of information that everybody's focused on Craig, because even Craig would say, like, the purpose of locking down the protocol was to hand over that power of the protocol over to businesses to build something cool. And there are actually people building some really, really cool things, and they deserve a lot more. They deserve a lot more credit than they're given by certainly by the mainstream crypto media, but really by everybody. I think those people building the businesses on top of BSV are a very important group of people, and I'm really proud to call a lot of them friends.
Yeah, there's a lot of great projects. I think the two that you named are definitely some showcase efforts. Twitch is no small feat, and what Tonic Pow does in terms of reference influencer style link marketing, super great. It basically it allows you to create a marketing and advertising campaign for dollars for any project that you want, and to be able to distribute it out through the networks that already exist. So anybody that is interested or curious in being able to create advertising campaigns, referral advertising campaigns, you can do that with Tonic Pow for the price of BSV. And I've got a short video on them as well.
Yep. Yeah, it's incredible. Nice.
There's I try to do like a feature on one or two a month if I can.
Cool.
Yeah, man. Well, if you want
I like your content on that.
I appreciate it. I don't want to keep you if you've got some other things to do.
Yeah, I should jet.
No problem. Well, we'll talk before too long. I do appreciate you coming on. And this is out on YouTube as well.
For sure.
So be good, and I will talk with you before too long.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Michael.